Okay, welcome to sorry, I'm going to go back to the beginning. Welcome to our first Digital Snow Day. Hopefully you pulled up the agenda off of SchoolFusion and read through it so you know what we're doing. Hopefully you also pulled up the handout for the notes today. I do have the answers posted on your version of the notes, so please check your homework, and then whatever questions you have, make note of those, and we can address those next class. Once you finish checking, then I'd like for us to take a practice quiz, because we'll have a real quiz when we come back on Tuesday. So I'll give you a moment, work through your quiz, so pause the video. Okay, hopefully you took the quiz, and here are the answers so you can check through them. We'll kind of talk through them real quick like. To find the complement, remember it's 90 minus your given angle. The supplement is always 180 minus your given angle. Number 3, anytime you're given two sides of a right triangle, you should always use your Pythagorean theorem. It doesn't matter which you choose as your A and B, but 15 has to be the C. So I did mine as x squared plus 6 squared equals 15 squared. Squared my two numbers, subtracted, and then your last step is to take the square root. Since 189 is not a perfect square, you can go ahead and just give the decimal answer of 13.7. The remaining 4 are our special right triangles. The first 2 are the 30, 60, 90. So just make sure you can identify what is your short, what's your medium, and your hypotenuse, and then we can work it from there. So for number 4, you're given the short. So to find the hypotenuse, which is your x, you multiply by 2. Use the short to find the medium, and you just multiply the short by radical 3. For 5, you're given in the hypotenuse, so we have to divide it by 2 to get the short side. And then you use the short side of 7 to find the medium, and we multiply the short side of 7 by radical 3. The last 2 are the 45, so remember those little hash marks tell you the sides are congruent. So 5, or x would be 5, and then if you have the leg, you just multiply it by radical 2 to get the hypotenuse. And number 7, you just go in reverse. If you have the hypotenuse, we divide it by radical 2. You'll need to clear that out and then reduce the fraction, and both x and y should be 9 radical 2. Okay, so be prepared. We'll answer some questions, but you'll have your quiz next class very similar to the practice quiz that you just took. Okay, as for our notes today, we're getting into a little bit more with our trig stuff. We're going to be looking at our 6 trig functions. What you've worked with in the past is the sine, cosine, and tangent, and today we're adding the 3 reciprocal functions. So cosecant is a reciprocal function to sine, secant is a reciprocal function of cosine, and cotangent is the reciprocal function of tangent. Now, hopefully you remember back from geometry using the phrase SOHCAHTOA. Remember where sine, or S represents it's a sine function, O is the opposite side, H is the hypotenuse. The CAH tells us it's cosine and adjacent over hypotenuse, and then the TOA means it's a tangent and opposite over adjacent. So we're going to use this little triangle down here to help us set up our trig ratios. So in a circle, hopefully remember your radius is always the segment that goes from the center of the circle to a point on the circle. So in this case, using our little triangle, the R is going to be our hypotenuse. The other 2 sides will label x and y, and the x will label on the x-axis side, and the y will label like on the vertical side, like your y-axis is the vertical one. Now theta, remember, is going to be this little angle at the center. Okay, and now we're going to use these letters to help us write our trig functions. So we said the SO is the opposite side over the hypotenuse. So from this little central angle, what side is opposite? Well, that would be the y. Okay, and then it's over the hypotenuse, which is our r. So the sine function would be y over r. Cosine is the adjacent side, so x would be the adjacent side. So x, oops, that's an x, and then over the hypotenuse of r. And then tangent is O over A. The opposite side we identified as y. The adjacent side is our x. Okay? So to get the other ones, we're just flipping their reciprocal partner. So cosecant is sine's partner. So we're just going to flip the sine function, so it's r over y. Secant is cosine's reciprocal, so we'll flip the fraction, so it's r over x. And cotangent is tangent's reciprocal partner, so if we flip the fraction, cotangent would be x over y. These you will need to memorize. Remember, we said there's a lot of stuff that we need to memorize in trig. But if we keep practicing with these, which we're going to be all chapter, they will become very familiar to you, so you won't really need to memorize. You'll already know them. Okay, we do have one term that we're going to define because all the problems we're going to be working today, our angle is going to be in a standard position. And what that means is that the initial side is on the positive x-axis. Okay, meaning this side right here, if we look at our picture, and then our vertex is at the origin. Okay, so let's take a look at some examples of what we'll need to do today. Okay, so what we'll be doing today is we're going to need to find all 6 trig functions for an angle when the angle's in standard position, and we are just given a point that's on the terminal side. So, how we're going to go about doing that is using our little Pythagorean theorem. But instead of doing a squared plus b squared equals c squared, we're going to use the letters of how we labeled this triangle here and do x squared plus y squared equals r squared. Okay? Now, the ordered pair gives us our values for x and y. So the 5 is the x, the negative 12, whoops, is our y. So our job is we need to find the r. So we're just going to plug these two numbers into that formula. So it's 5 squared plus negative 12 squared equals r squared. I'll square the 5, which gives me 25. I square the negative 12. It gives me a positive 144. And then equals the r squared. We add together. Whoa. Sorry, I don't know what's going on. So it gives me 169 equals r squared. And then to get rid of the square, we take the square root. So our r is 13. So we have, and I'm just going to list them here. So we have our x is 5. The y is negative 12. And we get those two from the order pair. And then we just found our r value. Oh my goodness. Is 13. Okay. So now all we're going to do is take these 3 numbers and plug it into our 6 trig functions. So if I do my sine, okay, sine was y over r, so my fraction is just going to be negative 12 over 13. Cosine is x over r, so we would just write 5 over 13. And then if we do tangent, it's y over x, it's negative 12. Over the 5. And then to do the reciprocal functions, cosecant, I'm just flipping the sign. So it's 13 over negative 12. Secant is cosine's reciprocal function, so I'm just going to flip it. So it's 13 over 5. And cotangent is tangent's reciprocal, so if I flip it, it's 5 over negative 12. Dinner is ready. Hold on. Sorry, dinner was just ready. Okay, so let's take a look at our second one here. Whoops. Okay, we're going to do the exact same thing. So they give us the order pair of x and y as 2 and negative 3. We plug it into the x squared plus y squared equals r squared. So it becomes 2 squared plus negative 3 squared equals r squared. 2 squared is 4. Negative 3 squared is a positive 9 equals r squared. We add them together. And then we take the square root. So r is going to be the square root of 13. So I like to list my values off to the side here. Oops. So my x we know is 2. The y is negative 3, and our r we found is the square root of 13. So now we're just going to plug these in. So sine is y over r. And we're going to allow you on these to keep the radical in the denominator for right now. Okay, cosine is x over r, and tangent is y over x. Okay, and then we're just going to flip them to do the reciprocal. I'm kind of writing out of room on the side, so I'm just going to write them below. So it's cosecant is sine, so I'm going to flip, so it's radical 13 over negative 3. Secant is cosine's reciprocal, so radical 13 over 2. And cotangent is tangents, and we flip it, so it's 2 over negative 3. Okay, so hopefully we're okay. We're going to skip that last one because we'll kind of do the same thing in the second part of our notes.